All right, so the platform I'll be presenting today is called PulseWeb, and it aims at, as Robert said, describing issue frames from media sources. Media produce a lot of text every day. It's very difficult to appraise, and they have a very specific, sometimes in some articles, way to frame the issues using some concepts involving some notions and relating those concepts. And the question here is how can we make sense of all this big data in an automatic way to detect automatically topics as they appear, as they are being framed, using those concepts, those multiple concepts, in an historical way, to be able to relate those topics across time in order to make automatic stories that help us making sense of the various evolutions of these issue frames, how these issue frames are actually evolving, merging, diverging, and also, and more broadly, competing in the global space of media production. So, this is the team of developers that's been involved in this project. I'll switch immediately to the corpus. As Robert said, the corpus is related to food security, so we were interested in everything that related to the notion of food safety. And we started with a corpus of press articles that's been made up of about 20K articles that were collected around a period of several years, from 2004 to 2011, that was based on a very simple request in a database that provides those articles. That's like hundreds of sources that were used to analyze the text that has been produced by all those news sources across time, in identifying specific terms and creating a semantic network of those terms in order to have data that describes how terms are associated at a specific moment, and have this evolving semantic network describing the evolution of these associations. And the methodology for this topic detection is relatively simple at this stage. We have this huge semantic network with these associations, and we are defining topics as an aggregate of terms that co-occur more often, very often. So we are using categorization techniques at the level of the network to describe those topics and find this very basic unit of description that we have at a very specific instant of time, that is a topic as an aggregate of terms that co-occur very often. And then the second step is about being able to match intertemporally those clusters. So we have those clusters, and some clusters, some issues are evolving relatively slowly, like some topics are being used, some new concepts arrive, some new concepts leave, and there is some similarity between those clusters across time. So we are able to connect those clusters historically, describing the evolution, the progressive, slow, but certain evolution of those concepts, and also be able to show how some topics, some distinct topics actually start to merge into a common topic, or some topics diverge into two different topics, or emerge or die. And eventually we have a string that is a connected component of those clusters that shows the evolution of the issue framing across time for a specific group of notions that are similar. And eventually we are clustering those streams into hyperstreams that describe broad issue frames. So we have a multi-scale analysis of the different issue frames that we have at very local level, clusters, and then streams, and then hyperstreams. That creates an automatic history that is being integrated into a platform, a web platform that is actually a prototype that's available on the web that you can try, that is available at this address that will be repeated. So no need to hurry to note it down. The web platform actually displays these kind of tubes that are specifically those streams with those clusters across time, merging, corresponding to some clusters of super topics, meta topics, that are competing at specific instants, where you see that, for instance, I'll come later to the description of the specific topics here, but you see that some groups of topics, some groups of clusters that were present at the beginning of the period actually start to disappear and leave room for other topics. So around the same issue of food security, we have a series of stories of issue framing that are actually occupying the space at different instants in different manners, involving different concepts. And the web platform is browsable, and that was one of the objectives here, is to make something that would be easy to use for practitioners, that they can actually zoom in, interact with the clusters, focus on a specific stream that relates to this issue, and then focus on the specific story that we have on the right that looks like a metro line that shows how the specific clusters are actually linear or not linear in case of divergence. And so we can zoom in again and have access to the notions that are involved in these topics, the specific notions that are used in this frame. And eventually we can also look at the articles that correspond to this issue. That is, go back to the raw data to check whether this framing corresponds to a specific set of articles that actually confirm the intuition that the practitioners had regarding a specific topic. There is also a geographic mapping in the sense that the data that we have is geographically tagged, in the sense that we have all the geographical regions and the countries that relate to the article that are mentioned, in the sense that eventually for a specific cluster we can activate the map and see which countries are actually connected to this cluster. This issue frame, does it correspond to a specific set of countries, whether it is also related to another frame that connects with the same countries or not. So it's possible to project back on the geographical data. And eventually you can reach an interpretation that is, at the moment, a reconstruction of what happened so far until 2011, where we see three specific, let's say, big framing periods. The first one is starts in 2004 until 2008 approximately, that was related to food security in relation to a humanitarian crisis that is essentially framing at this time, at this period, food security in relation with humanitarian crisis, with natural disasters, with wars, conflicts, and also the framing involves the question of the agricultural policies, like for instance the competition between biofuels or staple food production. And then starts a second period that you can see. The first period, which is in red, disappears progressively and is competing with the new framing that actually wins over, which is in the context of the financial crisis of 2008, where food insecurity is actually related to poverty in this case, and food riots due to the rising prices of food. So in this case, we see a new framing, again around the same issue, that is emerging and winning over. And then the third period, which is closer to us, which is food insecurity as a cause of social unrest, that starts to emerge towards the end of the set, that is represented in pink, and also involves a continuing stream, which is quite interesting, which is connected to food insecurity and the health problems. That is, that food insecurity is framed in terms of malnutrition issues, in terms of infant health, and that has been continuing over the whole period. That is always a topic that is being framed, not necessarily marginally, but at least always present across the whole period, whichever the events are. What is interesting here as well is that you can go back to this framing and see which agencies, which actors are actually involved at each period of time. And for instance, you can see that some institutions are much more present when some type of framing is adopted. Like for instance, during the 2009-2010 period, we have the involvement of the World Bank in the topics that is not present in the other period, in the sense that this economic framing around the financial crisis is connected by the media sources that we are observing to some specific institutions. So the institutions that are being considered as newsworthy depends also on the framing and on this competition. Let me provide you with a little bit of perspectives beyond this platform. So this platform has been working on food safety. Of course, it's possible to imagine that you can apply this to any kind of other topic. You can also imagine that this is not what the prototype does today, because the prototype is fixed now, but you can also imagine, and this is also very interesting for Global Pulse, that you can address real-time data, that with this general historical framing that provides you with the state of the art, so to say, of what the media has been appraising, you can also see progressively with new data flowing in how the new stories are actually connecting to the previous frames, and how possibly new framing emerges, so that you are able to predict that maybe some new elements of language should be used, or some new words are emerging in the media. And that also leads to the last point, and I'll finish with that, is that we are specifically looking here at the media agenda, and it is also possible to apply the platform to online media to compare the agendas of news media and also what the population says about these issues, and see whether we have the same type of framing, or whether there is a framing that corresponds specifically to the news media that totally is ignoring, overlooking, or maybe just partly ignoring what happens in citizen conversations. But thanks.